Friends, family, and keepers of the faith, welcome to another Del Boy blog. And as ever, I'm going to date stamp this. It's year 4 blog 50 in the new numbering scheme. In the legacy numbers scheme, it's blog number 206. And today is the first of the month. Yes, it's the 1st of February 2026. And it's going damn quick, isn't it? And so much going on. It's sometimes a bit bewildering. And one thing that I will say, as fast as it's going, I've tried to remain positive. It's been an absolute strain the last couple of weeks for several reasons, which will become known a little bit later on. But as ever, I'll look out the window and it's a dull sort of a beginning of February. Looks more like end of December. Damp, dull, wet. Not much else to say about it. I'm pretty sure it's the same for many people in Great Britain. There have been some weather warnings. We'll probably come across that in the news, which is probably a good segue, actually, to go to the news rather than do any sort of like little monologue for me. So I've written down some notes that came up while I was doing my walk that was being debated on Radio 5 Live, but also that was in the news when I looked this morning, which sort of like just kept me in the loop and reaffirm what was being discussed. So this one's quite a newer story, one that I don't really care to read out, to be quite honest. And it's the longest one on the page. It reads, Keir Starmer, that's our Prime Minister, publicly stated former Prince Andrew should be prepared to testify before the US Congress committee following release of 3 million pages of newly unclassified Epstein files, which seems to indicate greater ties to the convicted sex offender. Yes, this Epstein thing, I wish it'd just go away, to be quite honest. I don't really have opinions other than I don't like deceit. It seems very much Prince Andrew falls into that. Keir Starmer, our Prime Minister, probably publicly is being asked these questions all the time. So he's come out with a statement, a formal one. And that's, I think, where we'll leave it there. Every single one of them I find deceitful in some way. So there you go, as an opinion. The next one is Keir Starmer as well. Keir Starmer visited China this week to secure greater relations between the two countries. Yeah, there's been a new building sort of like commissioned for China to have an established footprint here. I believe he's managed to secure some visa exemptions, better tariffs, that sort of thing. That's going to be great for the economy. It must be a hard thing to debate with security. That's all I can say on the matter. It really means very little to me, some of these news articles, even though I work in the civil service, just purely on the basis that I'm not really a security person. I buy an awful lot of technology. It comes from Japan and China. I do know bugging and monitoring is a big issue for the public, for private companies, for public companies. So hopefully this sort of like improves, gets better, and has a better sort of like better, what's the word I'm looking for? It's not stability. Reputation. Yeah, that was the word. Moving on. West Midlands Trains officially entered public ownership today. I believe that helps the government somewhat. Doesn't really mean too much to me, even if I am in the Midlands. I don't use the trains that much. So we'll see whether that improves anything. Every time the trains are mentioned, it's always in regards to money, reliability, that sort of thing. A lot of the trains in the Thatcher era were sold, so we'll see whether anything happens here. I know some of the people that I watch this actually work in the train industry, so they'll definitely have an opinion. Next article is more weather alerts. So more weather alerts occurred in the southwest of England as places like Somerset were hit with severe flooding after Storm Chandra. Yeah, now you'll notice that I've been mentioning many storms. And each time a storm's been mentioned, I've been looking outside at the fence and all of that sort of stuff because of wind and rain and sogginess and all that sort of stuff. But my God, if you'd have seen any of the pictures on the news this week, you'd have seen the flooding. And there was one article that said that the flooding was so severe that the nursing homes were affected. Now, what that basically meant was that there was several nursing homes that this covered. And they showed a few. And obviously there is the public that want to visit loved ones, but there are some that need to go to hospital every day for things like, say, dialysis, and the whole car park and so forth is flooded, making it very, very difficult. What stands out to me on this is that we've known flooding is a problem in England. The government has always said, we've put this much money on our banks and all of this sort of stuff and irrigation. I mean, if you think about it, just think, if you go back in history, how long ago it was that irrigation was discovered and perfected. You'd think perfected anyway. So we've got rolling lands, and you'd think to yourself, right, irrigation, what are we going to do about it, right? And yeah, here we are. Water, lots of it coming through. Banks are a problem. All the repairs that were done last year totally destroyed again and have to be rebuilt because they use crappy bloody materials. They'll say it's because it's more severe than it was last year and all this sort of stuff, which I think is absolute rubbish. And because that's only just part of the picture. But now, when you consider that the National Health Service is under scrutiny, you'd think to yourself, it's again old age people that are affected the most, and people with bad medical history, like that need dialysis, like I mentioned. And here we go. Problems. This isn't going to go away. Sort it. Do what you need to do. I mean, it annoys me when I consider how much tax we pay. One of the worst ones is the road tax, which, to be quite honest, is supposed to go towards maintenance on the roads. And we know full well that it's put in one hand and then it's the coffers are taken out and they're put somewhere else, and they don't actually go on the roads or the pathways or anything else. And that's another thing. Everybody talks about the roads and they're bad. If you ever go for a walk, my God, the amount of tarmac that's raised because of the roots of trees that have risen the ground and and hills where we've had a lot of rain and it all goes down to the level plain and you're leaping over puddles. I've got trainers on, just thinking that's enough to go along our streets. Is it hell? I need wellies. It's ridiculous. It really is poor. So don't get me on to walking, because it's been a real task this week. Couple of more news articles, then we've finished. Debates continue for the assisted dying bill in the House of Lords as they filter through more than 1,000 amendments. Now, this is something that I've mentioned in my blog before. Esther Ranson, a well-known presenter, is dying, and she's been telling her family she needs to go abroad to help her die when her condition that she's got gets incredibly worse. So she went to Keir Starmer and says, can we have more emphasis on the dying bill? Now, 18 months later, or nearly 2 years, the bill was put through, and then there's more amendments, etc., etc. Now, a lot of people I know will have an opinion on assisted dying. I'm not going to debate it. We all have our own opinion. We all can keep quiet about what we feel about it. All I know is that it's sometimes good that they're deliberating all the different scenarios where this could be abused. I will say that's a good thing. I won't say anything else is good about it, but there you go. Now, the next one really annoyed me. The post office, that's the official Royal Mail post office, has closed the Horizon compensation scheme, causing distress for thousands still awaiting payouts. Now, I think everybody knows now about the post office debacle. It was made into a dramatization. It won awards. That dramatization forced the government to get more involved than they were. Huge payouts have been given. There are people that committed suicide because of this particular problem. And what does the post office do? Close down the compensation scheme. Ridiculous. Close it down when you've officially paid out. That's how I look at that. So there's just a couple of sad news, rest in peace, deaths, for people that have been in the public eye, but have sort of like shaped my childhood, or I had great respect for, or whatever. One of those is Catherine O'Hara. Catherine O'Hara died on the 30th of January, age 71, after a brief illness. And she was in a lot of films. I mean, some of the ones that you might be aware of are Home Alone, Beetlejuice. She was an Emmy Award winner for something called I think it's called this, Schitt's Creek or Sheets Creek. That lasted, I think, for about 5 years. And she was definitely in The Last of Us, which is what I think last watched her in. To me, I can see her face now in a film that I've been discussing with Ian, actually, in the last 2 months, which is a Steve Martin film called A Simple Twist of Fate. She had such a glowing, lovely smile face. Her presence on screen sometimes was very powerful. In a scene that she's supposed to be a bit part in, she'd sort of like steal it a little bit. But I think a lot of people will have seen Home Alone and Beetlejuice. She was even in the new one, Beetlejuice, which was literally, I think it was in the last 12 months. I nearly said literally, but I'm not quite sure if it was 12 or 18 months. I know I've got the film, watched it, thought it was all right, gave it an okayish review, said it wasn't as good as the first, but there's a great amount of years between the two films. So, my opinion will be slightly different to others. especially younger people that might have seen Beetlejuice, the follow-up, first. There will be that as I get older. People will see the newer one before the older one. But there you go. So rest in peace to her. It's terrible that a brief illness comes along and takes a life. Awful. Now, just before I went onto the stream with my friend Ian Hill, the Ramblings, which I do on Wednesday, I have to go into Facebook to click on the link that gets me into the discussion. And of course, I don't open Facebook very often. But when I did, the first news story that came up that said one of my artists, Marvel comic and DC comic artist, died. I believe it was the 28th of January. And it would have been his birthday 2 days later. And the person I'm talking about is Sal Buscema. What can I say about Sal? They call him our friend Sal because he was a friend to everybody. He was such a nice guy. He was such a prolific artist for many reasons that I think aren't really quite right, really. Whenever somebody mentions Sal, they mention the speed that he drew at and inked at, because he was an inker as well. Very much an all-rounder. But he got Marvel out of the shit more times than you care to remember, really, because he was super fast at drawing. And because of the speed, some people would say the detail in his art wasn't there. But then again, if you look at the history of drawing, you will recognize that people like, say, Steve Ditko drew very simple line art. It's your own characteristic in what you do with art, and I'm pretty sure Bob and Art will have an opinion on this. But he changed his art just like anybody else through the years. Some would say that it became a bit more angular. You could see the speed was taken away from the detail. He started to use heavier ink lines, giving a different type of depth. For me, I just loved it. The stories were great. The artwork, wonderful. The splash pages he did were great. Somebody mentioned in a chat in YouTube this week, when reminiscing about Sal, that he didn't do enough covers. And I'd agree with that. Marvel, just like DC, would usually get an artist to draw a comic, split the work up, inking, coloring, lettering, all of that sort of stuff, and then get someone else to do the cover. I must admit, when I'm writing a report, say in a job, I don't expect someone to do the front cover of it for me and I'll write the report. No, but art is a different thing, and things have to be done within a month, and therefore so that it's published. They're usually about 3 months ahead, just in case of slippages in deadlines. So I'm digressing a little bit. Sal was a great artist, mostly in the shadow of his brother John Buscema, who I must admit is an exceptional artist, so well known, mentioned in the same sort of leagues as Kirby, Neil Adams, John Romita Sr., Gene Colan, and a number of others that I could mention. But that shouldn't take away the two brothers' own individual input. And for me, Sal sort of like drew all the characters that I loved. So he did Captain America, he did the Hulk, a lot of Spider-Man. My God, he did a lot of Spider-Man. And the Spider Universe, which includes Spider-Woman and Spider-Girl and a load of others. I've even got some T-shirts for some of that Spider-Man work that is definitely Sal. All Sal. You recognised. If you can recognise an artist's style and you can mention the person by name, I think that's a good indication of an artist. Now, some of the accolades. He did a decade on the Hulk. I mean, a decade. Think about that. 10 years. But not only was he doing the Hulk, at the same time he was doing other art. Now, he did over 100 issues of a Spider-Man comic called Peter Parker, the Spectacular Spider-Man. That was unheard of. I mean, it's been broken many times in the 2000s now. But it was because Mark Bagley worked on Ultimate Spider-Man and did over 100 issues. But it was also, the reason that that was such an accolade is the writer that was involved on that also did all over 100 issues before they moved on to other projects. And you only sort of see those numbers when you start talking about the 60s, where Jack Kirby and Stan Lee drew on the Fantastic Four. They did over 100 issues. But generally, that it's sort of the same sort of feat as you'd get in darts for somebody getting a 9-dart finish, or getting the Big Fish Award, which is the highest checkout, 2 treble 20s and the bull, or I don't know, a 147 break in snooker. You know, it's that sort of thing. So it's a huge accolade. So I have to do my salute to Sal. He shaped my childhood. Such a lovely, from what I can tell, a lovely guy who I never got to meet. Just like John Romita Sr. I went to the States a number of times. Each time I missed when there was a comic convention. So these people didn't come over to England very much. And if they did, it would always be at a time where I couldn't go. So another hero of mine gone. And it saddens me, all of that. And that sort of like concludes the news, which was pretty sad. Had to take some water then. I've been talking for a while. And we get on to my week, which has been, I wouldn't say disastrous, but it's been very troubling. So I'll start off with my mum, because that's where it all begins. So the beginning of the week sort of started off normally. In fact, actually, we got a phone call from our surgery, a GP surgery, asking how my mum was after her first injection. And after giving him the positive news, he agreed that the second injection would be happening, and it would be early February. Fantastic news. I mentioned about the physio, because if you remember last week, we were concerned that physio might take weeks to arrange, and he said, leave that with me. I'll see if I can get that sorted. So all good news at the beginning. But things started to take a dip Tuesday, which really came to the fore more on Wednesday. And what I mean by that is on Tuesday night, after my sister's gone, I look after my mum. What happened is that I noticed how quiet she was. She wasn't talking at all. She seemed subdued, not happy. I didn't really notice a speed decrease in walking to go to bed. She seemed more resilient, sort of resistant to have a meal in the evening. Always a bad sign, losing appetite. But I mentioned that to my sister in the morning of Wednesday, and she noticed it as well. But this is where it gets sometimes a bit difficult, because I'd have hoped that I'd have been told that before I looked after my mum. But then again, I also recognised that I work till 4 and my sister leaves at 4. She has to get a bus. So sometimes it's very difficult to get information to each other. So some of the things I noticed in the morning, because I see my mum a good hour before my sister turns up, is that there was a wheezing in her breath. As we were getting her out of bed and as we were getting her into chairs and all of this, because there's multiple chairs she has to go into. There's the chair commode, there's the chair wheelchair, there's the chair where she sits most of the day and so forth. She has to get onto our climbing frame machine to get out of bed and all that sort of stuff. The more that happened, the more laboured or more use of her breathing is pronounced. And there was a wheezing. My sister was therefore very concerned, just like I was. We try not to show it to each other, but it's there. And we agreed we need to speak to the GP. I then had to speak to work and tell them what was going on. And they were very good about it and said, whatever you need to do. And most of the day was spent observing. We had a nurse come out very quickly. In fact, within about 2 hours. And the things they mentioned were low oxygen, temperature slightly elevated, but she is next to a heater, so that might be nothing. Blood pressure good. It was in the normal range for somebody of the age of my mother. But when they got the stethoscope out and listened to her lungs from the back, the left lung was almost silent and the right one, it seemed clear. She put that down to possible infection, but my sister and I deliberated before the GP came out that my mother is in the danger range to have what they call mini strokes. We believe this whole problem and the collapsing onto the floor back in March last year was mini strokes. You can have them in the evening, you can have them during the day. They're sort of like silent. They're not like a normal stroke where your face drops, your speech becomes slurred, you can't raise your arms, all of those things that we're aware of through adverts and natural information sheets. So we mentioned all of this to the GP, and she said you can't rule out that she hasn't had that, but like anybody that's not very well, you become more quiet. We mentioned to her that her jaw seems to have been dropped, like reading the paper with your jaw open like this. And my mother's not usually like that. She's usually got her mouth closed. Again, that could be fatigue. You get tired. All of that sort of stuff. But she couldn't rule out that she hasn't. Let's get the chest infection sorted. That's what we aim to do. And hopefully she gets more sleep. She asked us about the tablets. We've agreed to cut the painkiller tablets down to 1 in the morning, 1 in the evening, and replace the other tablet that we gave her, because we'd normally give her 2 in the morning and 2 in the evening, to just a paracetamol tablet while she takes the antibiotics, and also to see whether that stops the drowsiness a little bit. So what happened on Wednesday night was I got up at several times of the night. In fact, actually, it was 12 o'clock. I got up 2 o'clock and 4 o'clock just to hear whether there was any wheezing. My mum was snoring, so that was a good sign. Means that her airways are at least slightly open, which was great. Didn't hear too much wheezing. So I told my sister this in the morning. And And I, just like being very conscious about things, told work. And this is where inconsistencies at work can happen, because they seem to think that I was fishing for special concessions to be off to observe my mum. No, what I actually told them was that for the next 72 hours we need to observe my mother. My sister is here. Mentioned all of that. But they seem to think that I was looking for, because I'm tired, not feeling very well, concentration is a bit difficult, which it is. It affects your concentration whenever something's happening with a loved one. Someone who's as sick as my mother, that I was looking for special concessions. And they came back saying you could take unpaid holiday if you want. And I said, I don't know where you're coming from with this. I mentioned to my people manager, I wasn't looking for this. What I was trying to get at is that I might take holiday, or you might think that it's not worth me working, being as my mind is not on the game too much. It took about an hour and a half to get to that point, for which my people manager then had to formally apologize to me. But she let something out the bag which upset me. It's an indication, and it's only an indication, that I'm being monitored for how long I'm looking after my mother for, which is not an awful lot. There's been a number of occasions where I've had to leave my desk to get things like ramps out so that my mother can get into a mobility car, or a GP turns up to do an assessment, or when she needed those injections doing, and those take you away for, an hour, maybe, sometimes even. Most of the times they're 20 minutes here or there. And I've been very good, and I've explained to them that when I'm getting my mum out of bed, I make that time up by working at 7. To hear that management are monitoring this gives me an indication that they don't trust you. This is the thing, this trust business. What my people manager was very good at, she turned around and said, we need to look at your carer's passport and protect you. Because she couldn't agree or disagree with anything I said, but I said, oh, come on, you've implied it. And that, from my indication, indicates to me that you're observing me and you haven't even warned me. You haven't even said, we're doing a study. And you need to do that. Otherwise, it's entrapment. So we left on a sort of sour note. But I wasn't fishing for time off. And I'll tell you something else. What's really weird about this is I've been working so much. I haven't took holidays. I've got so much holiday off that I could have easily have took it off. But again, with the systems all changing left, right, and up and down, I don't trust how many days holiday I've got to take off, because it's very confusing. At the very beginning of the year, my then people manager did give me special circumstances to have time off, because it was in the first month of my mum's collapse, and she went to hospital 3 times in that month. And I had a week off. And then for the second week, I took half days, and the other half was given by the company. Very nice. The whole carers thing has changed now. You're allowed to take 2 weeks. It was a week. It's all changed now. So what you have to understand with this is that it's ridiculous to think that I'm taking the mick, because there's an awful lot of time where I'll work beyond 4 o'clock, or I'll have less than my hour's lunch, or I will work earlier than my start time to make up the hours or minutes sometimes that I'm away. Plus, is anybody else being monitored? The amount of times that in Teams, that's our communication channel, has shown a person is red in a meeting or yellow inactive is huge. And inactive usually means that you haven't touched your keyboard or your mouse for a while. And then it goes to an even worse one that appears offline if the screensaver comes on. So my answer to that was, have you looked at other people then? Because I think it could be looked at as picked upon. Anyway, in this week, I've done massive amounts of uploads. I've done training and been to all the meetings that were required of me. So as far as I'm concerned, I'm doing the work. So I think it was a bit harsh. That's what I'm trying to say. It was a bit harsh. So that's pretty much my mother. We've been giving her antibiotics, amoxicillin, I think it's called. I think those end today or tomorrow. They don't give you antibiotics for a long time. I think it's 3 to 5 days max. And we have noticed that there seems to be a little bit of an improvement. She's still not as chatty as it was, which gives us an indication that there could be issues here in regards to further strokes that might have happened. But then again, it could also be the dementia taking a greater route. And all I can say is my sister and I have worked as hard and as collaborative as we possibly can through this. And I don't think anybody other than a carer can understand just how difficult it is to concentrate. Even if somebody is there looking after your mother, you're naturally thinking, I want to go out and have a look to see if my mum's all right. I want to see if my mum's all right. I want to see if my mum's all right. It's in your head. It's not nice. Thank God sometimes that I'm working from home. So there's that. So that's my mum. I've talked about work. There's nothing really else to talk about. I've done all my work, done all the bulk uploads, updates, went to the meetings. So I don't think they've got anything to really complain about here. And I think that's it really, other than my week was personal, was all about my mum. Some things turned up, great. I've got my first doctor's appointment to discuss my diagnosis back in September on Friday, this week coming. I've done some shopping now that we've been paid, because I get paid monthly. So I've been doing stuff around the house as best as possible. And that's about it. There really isn't anything else to say. So you can imagine when most of my life revolves around care for my mum, and so forth. It's been a bit of a horrible week. And I was so looking forward that Friday was the end of the week, and I went, thank God for that. Because it started off with such optimism and then slacked off so quickly. And then this is what can happen. It's like having the rug pulled under you. And my sister and I have just worked so damn hard to keep some remnants of everything. So, can't thank my sister enough, to be quite honest. And I know just how much of a struggle it must be for her. We're both struggling. So you know, my sister's got her own things going on in her family and things to do with her own health that she's got to, well, you could say look forward to, but I would say that are going to be happening shortly is the best way to explain that. So yeah, that's that. So we'll move to the shout outs, and then I might have my first break. I must admit my throat's going a little bit, and I am quite fatigued because of the times that I've been getting up to monitor my mum at night, and it's been difficult getting to sleep, as you can probably imagine, with everything going on with work and everything going on with my mother. It's been a tricky one this week, more than last week, and I was tired last week because I was ill the week before. So yeah, so shout outs. As you know, I'm very, very grateful for people that watch, very, very grateful for people that comment, leave a question, all of that sort of stuff. So I'm going to read out the shout outs now, say thank you so much to anybody that's watched this. I mean, it really is just a diary that you're listening to. Always remember that. If I've got an opinion or anything like that, it's like a diary. Some diaries you don't want to see, some diaries you don't mind. This one is a sort of a legacy diary. So anyway, these people all left a comment. I hope I haven't left anybody out. They are in no particular order. They are just people that left a comment, maybe some questions. We'll discover that ourselves. And they are Rocket Bunny, Steve's Gaming Part 2, Carl Todd, Sandra Clark, Ian Hill The Ramblings, Colin Jones, aka Ponder, Roberts Retro Gaming, Martroid, and Wee Baba. And like I say, just because certain names might not be there, it could be because their comment has gone somewhere and it never came through. Other times it's because they've got their own problems. So I just want to thank every single one of those in advance. Thank you for leaving a comment. Thank you for any question you might have for me there. And I'll say it again. It's amazing that so many people watch this. It's usually over half my subscriber base, which is a great percentage. So, you know, I'm taken aback by that. No point having thousands of subscribers and 20 people look at each video. What's that? You know what I mean? It's not good as far as I'm concerned. Some of my friends do such exceptional work. Got way more subscribers than I've got, but their stuff doesn't get watched, and I don't know why. I mentioned them. I think that they deserve as every subscriber they've ever got to watch it, you know. But you know, that's how things are. Sometimes people will hit the subscribe, and that's because something cropped up and they thought, oh, I'll come back to that, and then they don't. So yeah, we'll leave it there. So then we're going to be moving into what people have written. So I'm at this stage just going to take a small break. I'll come back and then we'll try and get through that section. It won't seem very bitty to you, but I'll try and keep it as easy a transition as I can. Won't be a moment, therefore. Back soon. And I'm back, and that'll seem like seconds to you. I didn't do too much. Just splash my face, a bit more to drink, that sort of thing. Just to take me away from looking at text, which sometimes can be a bit of an issue for me for long periods of time. But we're now getting to the point where I'm going to read out the comments. So these are in no particular order. Apologies to anybody that did leave a comment and I don't read it out because it's been taken away. It's beyond my control. That's YouTube, their logarithm, all of that sort of stuff. I don't get to know about it. Generally, I'll leave a heart to say to keep the comment in the hope that that helps. So hopefully there wasn't too much of that this week. And these are in no particular order. It'll be different to the reading order that I read out of the shout outs. The very top one that I've got here is from Carl Todd. And let's see what he's put. Hi, Del. I hope that this week has been good to you and your mum. I had one of those weeks where everything seemed to happen all at once and I was stuck in the middle, juggling many issues at the same time. Yeah, welcome to my world. And we both know now, Carl, just what that means. As a result, as the week progressed, I ended up working longer and longer hours. By the end of the week, I was working through to 3 to 4 a.m. My God. Then getting a few hours kip. He put fee hours kip, but I understand. Few hours kip. And then back at it. Most of the issues are resolved now, but I was knackered and had a good long sleep yesterday. Let's move on to some questions for you. So you may remember me talking about my COVID days where I had to work regardless of what the world was being told. I had a special letter given to me by the government to give to the police if I was stopped on the road going to work, and I was working well above the 8 hours. It was more 12 to 15, 16 hours plus travel time. So yeah, I totally get that. So let's have a little look. Number 1, do you have any thoughts about the recent issues in decomps and recomps of old console games? This is where the original game code is decompiled and then recompiled on a different platform. This can result in the original game being ported to, for example, a PC and then running faster with higher resolution graphics, etc. These decomps and recomps are mainly focusing on games from systems like the Nintendo 64, the PlayStation 2, Switch, etc. So may not interest you. There's a lot of that stuff that comes up in my YouTube alert because I'm very interested in games from my past. I've seen lots of these types of videos. Some of them fall into the I'm going to do this from scratch. Some of them are it includes the ROM, but I've put a front end in to give it more oomph. You know, working with better resolutions, wider screen aspect ratios, all of that sort of stuff. A couple of instances of that have been just recently some Super Nintendo games like Zelda: A Link to the Past, Super Mario World, Metroid. They're all examples where you use the original ROM, but they've got a new front end. But there's been some decompile ones. I've mentioned actually a couple in the what I've watched section recently where Outrun was ported over to the Amiga. And there's a guy at the moment that's working on the Commando arcade board, but playing the Rob Hubbard soundtrack instead, which is all decompile work, etc., etc. What are my thoughts on it? I find it very, very interesting. I do like the idea that here's an example. When something was being done as an arcade conversion for the Commodore 64, the Spectrum, the Amstrad, the PC one was in its infancy and had EGA, CGA graphics. And as we moved forward, they haven't really had a lick of paint done to them. So if you look at something like, say, one of my favorite Amiga games from the very early days, Defender of the Crown, there is a CD version, but it's called Defender of the Crown. It's almost a 1.5. I'm talking about going back to the original and changing those graphics so they look like the Amiga ones instead of the EGA and CGA versions. That happened also for, I think, Sinbad and the Throne of the Falcon, King of Chicago, a number of others in the Cinemaware collection. But it's the same for an arcade conversion, say, of Mr. Do or Dig Dug or anything like that. They've rarely been gone back to, and most of them have been homebrews. But it would be very nice that those have gone back to a little bit more often. So I have seen this sort of work, and in many ways I think that that's a good thing in the examples that I've given for a PC. When you consider, say, the Outrun debacle, the Amiga and Atari ST versions were shockingly bad for the consumer. I think most people came away disappointed for every system that came out for, apart from the official Sega releases that they did on their own consoles, like the Master System and the Mega Drive, and which were slightly better, and the PC Engine and those sort of things. And many people have gone back and redone that. And with that, that's great, because we've got better coding routines now. So yeah, that's my opinion of it, really, that it doesn't hurt anything. You can add it to your collection or not add it to your collection. The choice is perfectly yours. If somebody has got great delight in decompiling it, recompiling it, and they've done it as a pet project and they want people to see their work, brilliant. Selling it again, yeah, well, they've done a lot of work, but I don't think I'd buy it, because when it comes to, say, something like the arcade conversion, I can play the arcade version. So it makes you think, why bother? But it's not about why bothering. It's about doing it for the fun of it, the knowledge that you can gain from it, passing on that knowledge to others, working out how clever back in the 80s and early 90s programmers were in bringing this game that you were so enamored with back in the day. Yeah, I'd say that. All of that rings true to me. So I hope that gives you a sort of an answer. Number 2, when I'm working, I use two 1080p monitors next to each other. And that allows me to run the application on one monitor and debug code or read documentation, etc. on the other. This setup works well, but recently I've been thinking about getting an ultra-wide monitor, since that would be better for gaming. Actually, very good for production as well. Unfortunately, I've been waiting for the release of the 5070 Ti Super, but the Super line has been cancelled, and now cards like the 5070 Ti are rocketing in price and are hard to find. Do you have any thoughts about ultra-wide monitors? I think you are using multiple monitors too? ? Yes, I am using multiple monitors. My monitors, there's 4 of them. There's 2 here and 2 here. And my standalone PC for arcade play is here. So I've got 5 monitors. I don't have them side to side. I haven't got the room. I'm looking, by the way, at the corner of the room, which means that I've only got so much space because I'm in a diamond. The room goes like this, which means I've only got that much space to put it in. So I do have my monitors stacked above each other, which is why sometimes you'll probably see my eye looks up rather than at the camera, which is just there, because I'm terrible because I'm looking at myself. But at work, I have a laptop, and that's hooked into my gaming monitor, sometimes my work monitor, but my work monitor, I'm waiting for a new one because it keeps shutting off after about 4 hours, and I don't need to put up with that. So I'm ordered another one shortly, and it will be going where that one is. So I'm having sometimes to do things on my main monitor, my own monitor, to do work. And it's fantastic because on my small screen on my laptop, which is what, 14-inch, something like that, 13-inch, it's a touchscreen monitor. It's very hard to see spreadsheets. So I'll move the spreadsheet to my larger monitor and put the work that I'm doing, which is in a program called ServiceNow, on the laptop, and I can then copy and paste or observe documentation while working on something else on the other screen. Absolutely fantastic. Do I have an opinion on widescreen monitors? I'd like one myself, to be quite honest. Like you, it's very disconcerting to hear about graphic cards. Now, what you have to understand is widescreen monitors, they have around about 35% more workspace, about 35%, if I remember rightly. 14 4K monitors, generally native, some are 4K, will want a higher performance graphic card, but I do believe you can get some real good oomph out of say a 3080 graphic card. You mentioned the 5070, and that's the newer range with the TI at the end as well. But you could go to the older 4070 or even the 3070 if things like ray tracing is not your thing. You will get a pretty fast response, although the CUDA cores will be less. Not necessarily are the newer cards the better option. In fact, a lot of people, I've been told, are holding back going to the 50 range cards to the 40 range and going up a step. So if they have a 4060, they're going to a 4080 rather than going for a 5060 card. So it is one of those things where stock availability is hard because of RAM. Prices are skyrocketing, and therefore a 4080, say, might be a better option than a 5070. It is down to what you want to do. You don't really want to spend a lot of money on a monitor and then go, but I'm going to put this crappy graphic card in. I don't really look at them as crappy in that respect, but I do understand you'd want it to be paired up with something that's far superior. And the 50 range is definitely a range that's improving. I do know that there's been better drivers and there's been newer revisions, but it is a shitstorm in a way, because you don't know when you buy from, say, Amazon, whether you're buying old stock or whether you're buying something that they've only just restocked themselves, and so it's the newer option. So that's a difficult one. I've been looking at that same problem with keyboards. I found out the other day that the Yamaha Genos musical keyboard has got a revision, and the newer revision has got more RAM and more features and all of this sort of stuff, and the older model therefore should be substantially cheaper. But you can put the new sounds on it and say it's the same price, but you then find out it's the older model. So yeah, it's a tricky one. I'd love a widescreen one. Just take it like this. That's what I said, and I stick with that. I myself would have to buy a new graphic card. I ain't got that sort of money. I'm looking after my mum. So there's the answer to that. But for you, I so hope you get what you want. And maybe you've already considered what I've said. You seem very, very intelligent. I'm pretty sure you have. So I'm not giving you any words of wisdom. But you did ask, would I want one? Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I believe some of my friends, I think Colin Jones, aka Ponder's, got a widescreen monitor. And I know some of my colleagues at work have told me they've got widescreen monitors. It has come up in discussion when I've been talking about other things. So, yeah. And yes, I'm using multiple monitors. This 2-monitor setup over here is for my Asus Zen book, which has got a Intel i9 processor in it. And this is my 2-monitor setup generally for my new PC. And I've got my one singular monitor just here. So that's great. And you've got a third question. Wow. It says, I'm not sure, this is your question, I'm not sure if you read the reports following the inquest into the death of footballer Gordon McQueen, who played for Manchester United, Leeds and Scotland. The inquest concluded that heading the ball was a likely contributor into his death, which started new debates about heading the ball. Do you have any thoughts about this topic? Do you know of any Coventry players that have suffered from brain injuries related to heading? Now, yes, this is something not close to my heart, but something that I discussed with my dad when he was alive. He was an Aston Villa supporter, but also a Coventry supporter because of my mum. And he would talk about how when he played football, because believe it or not, my dad actually did try to go and play for one of the major teams. I think it was Aston Villa, but he had leg injuries, so it didn't go any further. I think it was on the week before he was going for his test to play, and we're talking the late 50s, early 60s. So it's not going to be much interest to a lot of people out there. But he told me when I was playing football, he said heading the ball was very, very important. However, he was jealous of a little bit about how footballers are a bit prima donna-ish, because when he was playing football, it was a thick leather like leather ball with stitching. And every time you hit it with your head, it was like heading a brick. And he said he came away sometimes after playing for a county or a local game, how he felt dizzy or definitely like he'd been through the mill if he was headering the ball a lot in that particular game. And he did mention a particular Coventry player. I think the person's name was Norman Smith. I don't know too much about Norman Smith because we're going back to the era when my dad was playing. So we're talking, I suppose, pre-war and post-war for World War II. And I don't know too much about those players. But it's been in the news about rugby players suffering head injuries, definitely footballers, and how many we've lost, and how many of those people that we've lost were in their later lives diagnosed with memory issues. So whether they had full-blown dementia or Alzheimer's, I'm not sure of the figures, but ball technology, they're incredibly light these days. But I believe there is a Coventry player that played not as far back as 2022, if I remember rightly, that has got full-blown Alzheimer's. And they're debating whether heading the ball caused that, even with those lighter weight balls. So yes, I'm very conscious of it and saddened by it. And I just think to myself what my dad was saying. And I think I actually did come across one of these heavy leather balls when I was at school, which I think they called them practice balls then. And yeah, my God, it was heavy. You deflated that, you had several pounds of leather in your hand, And when you pump it up, it's not much of a difference. The stitching must have just by the stitching alone, with a ball that's being crossed in so high and then coming down at quite some speed, and you trying to header that into the goal mouth. Yeah, I can imagine nobody wanted to do that. They wanted to chin it down and use their feet. It must have been pretty bad. But to answer your question, I don't know too much about Gordon McQueen. I do know about Manchester United. I did get an awful lot of information about Manchester United because I lived in Manchester, and I was able to go to the director's box because I was working for Lloyd's Bank at the time. So it was in my very nature to find a little bit of history about Manchester United, but I was never that enamoured because my team was Coventry. So, but it was very interesting to read up about. So you've put all the best to you and your mum. I hope that did answer your question. P.S. The new 64 demo from Fairlight has just been released. It's called The Hat, and I'll have to look out for that. I do like the demo scene. Fairlight are well established. So yeah, I'll have a look at that. And salute, my friend. Thank you very much, and I hope I gave some interesting answers there. Moving on, we get to Sandra Clark. Sandra's a great person. She goes to quite a few conversational chat things, not only the one that I do with Ian, but others. And I've seen her chatting away. And she's put, "Hi, Del. First, let me say happy birthday to you." Yeah, I know, very late, but better late than never. Thank you very much. That's very nice of you. I hope you and your family had an enjoyable week, and I hope you have your license back. Yes, I do. I admit I've not watched every blog, as it's hard to devote over 2 hours of watching one video. No offence intended, and no offence taken. I've looked at it myself and thought, shit, I've got to get this lower, and hopefully I can. We are approaching again my 5th year, so it's something that I'm looking into. I have a question though. If you could have any gaming related thing right now that you don't own, what would you pick? Oh, that's an interesting question. I don't think I've been asked that, although I have been asked maybe the same sort of question but in a different wording. I think I've mentioned before that my friend Alan Mainmeister, which I'm sure you're aware of, Sandra, a couple of years ago, he stayed overnight so we could go to the Zap event. This is an event that happens every year, and it's within 20-mile distance of this house. And he was coming from Scotland, so it made sense for him to come down, stay overnight, go to the event, stay another night, go back the next day. And we had plenty of room. And my mum didn't have the problems that she had. So another note on that. And he brought down his Steam Deck. Now, the Steam Deck was something that I dismissed. Not because it's not a great product. It was because I said to him at the time, I don't think I need portability in my life at the moment. I've just moved into the MOJ. Now, I work more from home now than I do go to work at the office, and docking it would make it a very powerful system, but I've got a powerful system enough, or should I say I had 2 machines, a laptop and my old PC, which you can see on the floor down there, still down there, still need to work on it. And the thing about it is, I poo-pooed it just because I didn't see the portability. But when he showed it me and he put a race game on, it was incredible. Oh my God, the screen looked brilliant. And I just thought to myself, yeah, I could sit in my chair there, not have to get up on my PC and look here. and I could hook it up to my big screen there and play it just equally as well. And it took me back to the days and my deliberation when I was buying a PSP or a Vita. And I thought to myself, I can see myself talking me into this. But it was at the time about a £600 device. And it came in 3 flavours, which I believe it still does. And since then, there's been Xbox ROG, I think they call it. And the Steam Deck is now approaching its 2nd iteration. So maybe I could buy a second-hand original. I can see me using it. So that'd be one. And there are plenty of other, and they're mostly handhelds that I get. Oh yeah, I'd like one of them. Yeah. Handhelds have always had that appeal to me. And like I said, I've only bought the cheaper, like RG35s, you know, Powel kiddie stuff. But going beyond that, I've looked at controllers. The X Arcade has got a new controller that's nearly $500, so that would be a £400 investment, which does basically the same thing as my old X Arcade, but it's got a better trackball, better flippers. You can buy a stand for it. It's, you know, better reactions than my old one. The buttons will be newer, you see, even if they are Sanwa, which is great. I've only ever seen a white one. I think it was it Retro Gamer? Was it another one? Wicked Gamer, I think his name is, that demonstrated the whole big thing. And that would definitely be something I'd like. Although, again, it's missing a spinner. So another thing I'd like is a spinner. I know my friend Colin has made his own. There was when I was looking at the RMC channel, which I mentioned in my what I've watched on YouTube, Heber, I think the company is called, that RMC partly are in partners with, and they brought out their own Mister called the Multi-System 2 and the Multi-System 1. We're working on a spinner, but I've heard nothing since. So they do some custom joysticks. So there's a number of custom things I wouldn't mind having. But they are sort of down the road a little bit. I definitely can't afford them at the moment. But maybe that's giving you some clues into things I wouldn't mind. On other notes, you continue. I do try and watch you on Wednesdays, but being blocked to comment is annoying. I wish you would stream from your channel, and then I know I could comment. All the best to you. Bye for now. And I must admit, it saddens me that your problems are there. What I will say is that we'll repeat it multiple times. There's no blocking in the way that it seems to be being implied, in the fact that your name is not in any sin bin anywhere, and that any blocking has been done by YouTube themselves. And we've put you in the safe area a number of times, and it's made no difference. So I can only imagine that YouTube's own algorithm or something has done this. And from that perspective, the only option we could give you was create yourself another account. Just a separate little account off of your main one that you come in and you can chat. When it comes to I wish you could stream from your own channel, I wouldn't be therefore the invited person, would I? I'd be inviting my friend, and I would be then classing it as a separate episode, because it wouldn't be Ian Hill the Ramblings live stream with guest Dell, would it? It would be live stream of Dell with special guest Ian. He has been on my channel. I have done some lives with Ian. There are going to be more of those. That's a definite. I will say that here. But when you're a guest, you go over to their side. So that puts you in that position of, what can I do to appease you? And that's my only option I've got, was create another account just for that channel. And revert back to your other one for everything else. There's nothing that we can do. Wish we could do more. I know that he's tried all he can. That's all I can say on that. I'm going to read out one more before taking another break. Must admit, I'm quite fatigued and need to get some more water as well. I'll say salute to you, Sandra, and thank you so much for being a huge supporter of me. It's very much appreciated, and I love it when you comment. Absolutely fantastic, and it's great. The conversations we've had in the past in regards to film and TV, absolutely great. And we move to Frank Holder. Let's see what Frank's put. He's put, "Hello, Del. Sorry I've not commented much recently, but I've been in the process of starting up my own business with my brother, so I barely have a spare minute these days. But I commented today as I want to ask you a question. And I just want to say, wow, what a fantastic thing. I hope this entrepreneurism that are in people that watch this, everything's going swimmingly for you. Thank you very much for getting something off the ground that is a passion project, and hopefully something that gets you some money. That's what we do that for, business, isn't it? So good luck to you all. You've continued. So today, as I want to ask you a question. You seem to be very relaxed and laid back guy, but does anything people say online really made you angry? My brother asked me this today, and I gave him a list of people who boil my piss. Yeah, I must admit, it's a famous expression that I've used myself. I.e., flat earthers, people who think contrails are chemtrails, people who say Paul McCartney is dead and was replaced by an imposter, space deniers, moon landing deniers, people who deny the Holocaust happened, etc. When someone says one of these things, I'm a calm and friendly guy, but serious, these people I want to punch in the face. Do you have a list of people that infuriate you if someone says them? To be quite honest, you've mentioned some of the ones that really get on my wick. The Holocaust one, that's amazing too. I think these people need to get a check on their life. To poo-poo 6-7 million people that were gassed and say it didn't happen. Oh, right. What did we do with them then? Even in those day and ages, we had a pretty accurate system of knowing the population growth and the numbers. There's all the bodies, the skeletons that are left in the concentration camps. Ridiculous. Flat earthers, they make me laugh more than annoy me. Satellites going around, how gravity works, all of this sort of stuff is all, they've got their own opinion and their own answer to it. Like you can't fly over the North Pole or whatever because it's a no-fly zone, and the reason for that is because we're on a flat planet, etc., etc. Rubbishy bollocks is really what I have to say to all of that. There's too much evidence. The moon landing, that's an old one, isn't it? We've all got our own opinion on that. We're just about to go again. Maybe that will calm some of these people down a little bit. People who say Paul McCartney is dead and was replaced by an imposter. I did hear that one a year or so back. I hadn't heard about that one until then. And it made me go, you are? What, is he a robot? What, he's got a secret brother? If he has, in his old age, his voice isn't getting any better. Because there was a YouTube video that said 10 people who they think should retire now. And then they played an example of their voice at a concert when they separated the mic. And they sound terrible. Bollocks, all these people. Paul McCartney is absolutely fantastic. If he doesn't want to retire, he doesn't want to retire. If you don't want to see him, don't go and see him. Nobody's forcing anybody on this. It's what gets me a little bit about these things. But I think you've covered the majority. There's a lot of people that I see commenting other YouTube things, what we consider trolls that annoy me. But that's not people that are saying something isn't true, where they're questioning science and what we know. I mean, I've never gone up to a priest or anything and say, are you seriously deluded in thinking that there's a heaven or something like this? When you get close to death, I'm pretty sure you'll be praying. It's one of those things. But we won't go down the religion line because that's deeply personal to each person. But yeah, Holocaust, moon landing, space doesn't exist, all of that sort of stuff. But yeah, boils my piss as well. And like I say, some people that go on channels just to cause a problem, I don't like. I will say this, when it comes to being laid back, to be quite honest, I just don't care anymore, because after my heart attack and with my mum's health as it is, these people that want to cause problems, I couldn't care less. Do it if you want. Not bothered. If you have a life-threatening thing happen to you, if you've got stuff going on in the background for loved ones that might not be here again this year, your comments mean nothing to me. Absolutely nothing. And that goes for anybody that's for anybody, really. I'm not talking about myself here. This happens to past friends. I've heard this happen to people that I used to chat with, and it sickens me. Why? Why cause a problem? They're creators that want to help. So bollocks to all of that. So we'll move on to the next one because I'm feeling all right at the moment. Salute, by the way, to my friend Frank. I hope I've given a good round answer, but yeah, you're in the same mindset as me, Frank. Thank you very much for your support and asking that question, because I think it needs to be raised. Not only about poo-pooing science, but the rest of the things in regards to people that want to cause trouble. Load of shit. Want to punch them in the face. Yeah, I did used to feel that way. Now I can just go, who cares? Moving on. Rocket Bunny is next. My friend Rocket, and he's put actually less this week, but let's see what he's put. He says, hi, Del. Just a quick comment this week to wish you and your mum well. Glad your mum has responded positively to the steroid injections, and I hope you can get them to do the other leg as soon as possible, and you now know that's happening. Thank you very much for the kind words. You say, take care and all the best. Salute, you've put. Thank you so much for recognising salute, which comes from my great smile and fun I have watching Frankie Howard in Up Pompeii and other productions he was in. Salute, such a great art, such a great ending. Goodbye to people. I love it. So thank you so much as well. Absolutely brilliant. So I'll be back in a moment to read out the next one. We're doing pretty well. And hopefully the next ones are going to be as swimmingly easy to answer a question. Haven't had a difficult one yet. Well, I bet you any money that's just about to change. I'll be just a moment. And I'm back. And we'll continue saying salute to those past comments that I've read. And the next one is from my friend Steve, from Steve's Gaming Part 2. And you know just how much of a close relationship I have with him. Just mention that I was deeply concerned last week when he stated that he might have to hold back doing some content because he was having issues with his capture card. So I looked at my own setup and know that I've got a capture card here, one I don't use anymore. It's a mirror box. It's a 4K capture card. It was the first one I bought, and it's not used at the moment. It could be used. I could hook up handhelds to it, but I could also do the same with my Legato that I've got now. And yeah, I offered it to him, and he then came back to me and stated it was a bit more concerning than that, actually, because it happened to be the USB port that was the problem, and that he's got around it by going to another USB port. So, of course, being very protective, being very sort of like just built my my new PC that went quite well. I know that it's very rare sometimes that you have the issue on the header on the motherboard where you connect the pins and a cable goes to wherever the external connection is. And it could be that this port was not that at all, and it could have been the one that was on the back of the machine, you know, itself, on the faceplate. But thinking about whether it was the header, I gave him some advice by basically saying you can buy a faceplate that goes to the back of your machine, and you can connect that header to another port, and they're as cheap as chips. They're about £4 or £5. You could even take out the USB port from its holder on the faceplate on the front of your machine, if that's where it's connected to, trace the wire, and basically buy a new unit of that. Sometimes you just need to change the cable. Some of these things are so easy to change, but it doesn't matter. The situation is moved forward, and he's got it in another USB port. So that's fine. So that's really, really good. But I am protective like that. I always try and help wherever I can. And it makes me think technically about things. But anyway, I'm digressing. Let's see what my good friend Steve has got to say. He's put, "Hi Del, enjoyed the blog as always. I hope your week has been okay for you and your mum. You now know how that is, and sadly it's been a bit of a disastrous week. Bit of a sad week for me, as Tuesday marked 67 years since the Apollo 1 fire, which ended the lives of Gus Grissom, Ed White, and Roger Schaaf. And just before we go any further, if I'm sorry I pronounced those names wrong, but yes, I remember that on top of the cone for Apollo 1, a huge fire erupted, killing all three. It must have been awful when the flames diminished, the charred remains of those such brave astronauts that tried to move the space program forward. Absolutely awful. 67 years. Wow. I remember, reading up and watching so many documentaries on space, just what pioneers they were and how sad it was. And then you say, on Wednesday, it was exactly 40 years since the Challenger accident. Yes, this is something I remarked upon on Ian Hill, The Ramblings live stream, because it means something to me as well, and I'll talk about that. I still remember that day so much, as two of my favourite astronauts died. Ron McNair, talk about him in a minute, and Judy Resnick. Oh, she was the electrical engineer, wasn't she? She was the software and electrical engineer. Striking black hair. What I mean by that is the style and how dark it was, and that I remember seeing in all of the build-up to the Challenger takeoff. So it was horrible to see, and was worse years later when I found out the crew cabin survived the orbiter breakup, and that they only died some 2.5 minutes later when the crew cabin slammed into the ocean at something like 200 miles per hour. I cannot imagine how horrific that was for them. So yes, sad memories indeed. Yeah, it meant an awful lot to me. This was in January, as you know, because it's 40 years to the day. But it was made very poignant for me because of another artist called Jean-Michel Jarre, who was doing his Rendezvous album. And he had something lined up at the concert to show where Ron McNair, who was a profound saxophone player, was going to play a piece for, I think it was Rendezvous 6, if I remember rightly. When he died and the concert went ahead, it was changed to Ron's piece, if I remember rightly. And I played that album to death. This was the days when I was walking to work, because I'd left school, got into a YTS, and now was working in a proper work environment while I was looking for my main career. So I was working in supermarkets and stuff like that. In fact, it was Summersby's, if I remember rightly. And I was walking through our rec. You know, it's sort of like a big playing field where children play in that. And I was walking through it, and I'd have my Walkman on with Dolby noise reduction and all of this, metal tapes and stuff. And I'd be listening to the Jean-Michel Jarre record, you know, the cassette of it, and waiting for the concert. And yeah, it brings it all back to me, that whole year. Because not only do you have the disaster that shook you, there's the memories that come back 5 months later when the concert is broadcast. And I remember buying that on VHS. This was the medium at the time for you to buy music cassettes. So I'd got the tape of it, the vinyl of it, the VHS of it, and later on the CD of it. I don't know whether I actually bought it on DVD or Blu-ray. I'll have to check that out. But yeah, those memories, and they were all sad memories. I was heavily into the space program. And further things occurred after that. It set the space program back hugely. But it's not about that. It's about the loss of life and the bravery of these people. So Ron McNair was definitely a name that I remember, and I mentioned all of this in Ian Hill, the Ramblings live stream on Wednesday. So yeah. So yes, the memories indeed. On a more cheerful topic, you say, I hope you can find time to stream a game sometime soon. I missed your last stream as you didn't tell us. Naughty Dell. Give us a warning. Laugh out loud. Yeah, this is one of those ones where I mentioned it the first time I was doing it. The second time I did it because I was asked to. They said, please, can you do it? And I did it at the same time. But it's very opportunist, is what I'm trying to say. So getting out a post and then streaming instantly probably wouldn't work. Most people get these post notices 24 hours afterwards. I can't tell you how many times Mainmeister has put out a I'm going to be doing my live stream on Sunday from 7 o'clock, guys. Hope you could join me. And I've got that on the Monday. What a waste of time. Which is why Discord and everything is such an important thing to be a member of. And I'll repeat that Mainmeister's got a Discord. I've got a Discord. You get more up-to-date things going on in there. Although me finding time at the moment is very difficult for that as well. So bear that in mind. But yeah, I'll do my very best. In fact, actually, I left a comment for you and I did say I'd read it out. I put, heart left to keep comment. I remember those tragic days only too well, especially Challenger. As for the stream, if I can, I will. But it's very much an optimistic time to stream at best. The comment will be read out Sunday as normal, and hear that you're on YouTube, and hear it on YouTube. Laugh out loud, which I've done. So, okay, on with the questions. I have 2 for you today. Question 1. If you could get Lego to make a Lego kit of anything you think of, what would you pick? I'd pick a model of the Liberator from Blake 7, an absolutely fantastic one, and one that I think was mentioned by the same person who asked the same question several weeks back, Steve. Only his question was a bit different to yours. His was if money was no object and size was no object. For which I answered I'd love a Lego edition of the Grand Canyon. Oh, what a project that'd be. And who cares about space if you live in a mansion? I'd do it. That'd be absolutely astounding to me. The Liberator, absolutely. I don't know, whether they've done a Lego version of a Eagle from Space 1999. That'd be great. I think that would work well because it has a boxy back compared to, say, like the Enterprise, which is very rounded. That'd be, I know that's been done, but I wouldn't have minded a kit on that as well. In fact, there's a lot of Jerry Anderson work that I wouldn't mind a Lego edition of, like Thunderbird 2, an Interceptor from Captain Scarlet, Joe 90's car, an SPV pursuit vehicle from Captain Scarlet, a UFO tank, the Shadow tank. That'd be great. So many of my childhood things that I bought dinky toys of. I wouldn't mind having a Lego of. Whoa, yeah, that'd be great. Can't think of anything else, really. The Grand Canyon was inspired at the time that I was reading out that question from Colin. So question 2, consider all the computers and consoles you've owned. Wow. Okay, that's a few. I'm willing to bet there was one game on each that made you think, I want that system. What were the games that made you want the systems you've owned? Great question, and again, only semi-answered by me. Most people know, and you included, my love of Ghosts and Goblins and Ghouls and Ghosts. It's just one of those games that I know you hate, and not for bad reasons either. It's just too darn difficult, and I get that. But it's that Arthurian theme and zombies and things that make me come back. I have to play it. And I bought my PSP for that. I bought my SNES for that game. Let me think. I bought the Atari 2600 for Yar's Revenge. Well, no, that's not true. Yar's Revenge was later. I bought that for Adventure. That's right. I bought that for Adventure. My friend had the Atari a good 6 months to a year before I could afford it. So I had it in about 78, 79. He had it in 77. adventure. Yeah, I think that was the one for that. I didn't buy the VIC-20 for cartridges. That was because it was a computer. But I did buy cartridges for it because I had an Omega Race and Jack Attack and Jelly Monsters, and a few Scott Adams adventure games. But let's see. I bought the Xbox, the very first Xbox, because I was in Manchester at the time, and a friend of mine told me how easy it was to hack. So there wasn't any particular game, but if it would have been one, it would have been Halo. Oh, the GameCube. Yeah, the GameCube I bought for Star Wars Rogue Squadron. Yeah, I did buy it for that. And it also helped that Super Monkey Ball was there. Trying to think. I bought the Dreamcast. Believe it or not, I was into a heavy puzzle element, and I wanted Choo Choo Rocket. A friend of mine bought a Dreamcast. I went round his house, and he had got 2 games. Can't remember what the name is, but he had Choo Choo Rocket, which he said came with it, which is true. And another one, which was like a jumping game in 3D that you watched from a top-down view, very much like a sort of Frogger type creature that jumped on platforms that gave you this essence of 3D because of how 3D was working on the Dreamcast. No, it wasn't 3D as in glasses or anything, but it was the 3D environment. I bought the Nintendo 64 specifically for Mario. And I'm glad I did, because I played one of the greatest games on it, which was, again, a Link game. Believe it or not, most of these games that you bought, like the SNES, which came with a Mario game, Link was the better game. So even with the SNES, I'd say that Zelda: A Link to the Past is better than Super Mario World. 2 fantastically class games, but I geared towards the Zelda games. In fact, actually, I bought my first Switch for Mario Odyssey, because for every Nintendo console, I had a Mario game. In fact, my Wii U, the first game I bought for it was Mario. So Mario has been in my head for years and years and years. Just trying to think now. I mean, I remember one of the first games I bought for the PC when I put a CD drive in it was Seventh Guest and Mega Race. For some unknown reasons, those come to mind. So that's the PC and game playing with a new device. By the way, well, I played to death the Spider-Man game on my Dreamcast. Oh my God, how many hours did I put into that game? The Nintendo DS. Again, it would have been a launch title. Could have been Mario again. The 3DS was not a Mario game. In fact, I think it was a submarine game, a shoot 'em up because I was inspired by the sideways shooters like Metal Slug. And when the 3DS came out, there wasn't that many games. And I remember 2 of the earliest titles was this submarine sideways scrolling shoot 'em up thing, and Street Fighter 5, was it? And I'm not even a Street Fighter fan, but I bought it because I wanted to know what the 3D was like. Go figure. And this was at a time where games were bloody expensive. A lot of the consoles I bought were opportunist because of people around me that bought them, and we could share games, and later on it would be hacking them. So, yeah, I hope that answers that question. I've deliberated on that one quite a bit. You say, I'm done. All the best, my friend, and give my love to your mum, and you know I will. And if you don't know already, Steve's got a fantastic channel. I'll be talking about it a bit later on. Please go and support all the people that have got channels that I mentioned. They're all in the description. Fantastic. And thank you very much, Steve, for asking those questions. And going on to somebody else who's got his own channel and somebody who I collaborate with very, very closely and is such a close friend of mine and a big supporter of me is Ian Hill, The Ramblings. And he's just about to come up. And I can see there's quite a bit to read out, so I better take a swig. And he's put, "Hi, Dowboy. Hope you and your mother are doing okay and everything in your life is as normal as it can be. We had another good live stream on Wednesday, which is always so much fun. As usual, I'm feeling cold. No matter what I do, I don't feel comfortable. Again, it's felt very quiet with the road being closed. No sign of noisy roadworks with diggers and drills. Ah, Steve, that'd be a godsend. Which is good to have. I don't like any disruption. I think the older I get, the more I'm set in my ways. Go and speak to Steve, old lovely person that he is. I'm also loyal to my football team, which I started to support in around 1969, which is, of course, Leeds United. Don't look at the score yesterday, mate. Yeah, I've stuck by them through all the highs and lows. I can't support another team. It stays with you for life. Though I confess, because of other distractions in my life, I don't watch the games like I used to. Yeah, I've been watching the games yesterday. My team didn't do very well either. And snap in regards to the highs and lows. I've continued to watch TV series and films. I enjoyed the downloads of Pluribus you sent me. It's an excellent sci-fi story. I'm looking forward to see what direction it will take. The film Dust Bunny was a monster under the bed story, which had a great cast with Mads Mikkelsen and Sigourney Weaver. The high heel guns were cool. It was an action fantasy film. I would have enjoyed it with more horror and without the awful children-friendly monsters. It ruined it for me. I'm probably in a minority with that opinion. I don't think you're in a minority. I will give it the benefit of the doubt. It seems like a film Tim Burton would do. I know he did a film with, what's her name? Green. Oh, lovely lady. In fact, what a gorgeous lady she is. And that was a time travel-y, timey-wimey story. And a Mrs. Perib something and extraordinary events. Do you know what? I'm never going to remember this with my head like it is at the moment. So do apologise for that. But yeah, it was sort of like a live action Monsters Inc. But it was nice to watch something new. And it's one that I'd consider owning. I destroyed my copy after I watched it. As I do with anything that I eventually buy. One of my favourite films that I watched this week was Ned Kelly, 1970, filmed in Australia, about a popular folk legend who was an outlaw. There have been quite a few films based on his life. It had Mick Jagger in the title role. I thought he was quite good in it. The use of body armour was interesting in protecting himself from bullets. So my question this week in 2026, how can a criminal stay on the run without getting caught in this age of technology? What a good question. Let me see, being as I used to work in probation, what my thoughts were, because I'm pretty sure I asked a senior probation officer this question. And I think when we were deliberating it and working with the police, but not actually asking them outright a police question like this, I think we worked under the assumption that although there are a lot of CCTV cameras around, they probably don't all have the same quality cameras in them, which means that they're low grade. And also, probably like speed cameras on motorways, they're probably, some of them, not even live. That could be a consideration on how you can get away with things. The other thing is probably the lack of people that watch the news these days. These people must have to go into shops at some point or get out money from a cash point machine. And I know cash point machine cameras are crap, unless they've changed drastically in the modern age. But everybody wears hoods. Everybody keeps their head down. People that don't watch the news, therefore, don't recognise a face if they came into their store. Police are not on the beat as much, so they don't hand out leaflets to say, keep this handy in case this person comes into your shop for the area that they were last seen in. All sorts of that comes to mind. But then again, we've all carry around, or should I say a lot of us, carry around mobile phones with cameras. And we're always recording things that are going on, like police brutality and all this sort of stuff. So why we're not seeing these people and filming them walk down the high streets or walking down a normal residential area, I don't know. Can't answer it. But it's got to have something to do with it. It's a lack of work. It's a lack of police force, for definite. You know, the rest of it is, do I really want to approach this monster on whatever he's done? Or do I care? Or am I worried about the comeback of it if I was to get involved? And would I have to go to court and all the rest of the stuff? So, yeah, a lot of people get away with murder. Pun intended a little bit with that one. All my best wishes and have a reet grand time. Reet grand time. I'm getting better at saying that. Thank you very much, my friend. And if you haven't subscribed to him already, or Steve, or any of the others that have got channel, please go and do so. Absolutely marvellous. And great supporter of mine. And thank you so much for that, Ian. And so looking forward to this Wednesday. Such a great guy, as is everybody that chats in that channel. Cy Robson, Tony Yorks, Muckman-Movies, all of those all come in every Wednesday. Like they're sort of like great friends that sit at the table with us in a pub while we chat the world away about anything we want. So it's great. So moving on, Robert's Retro Gaming, another person you should subscribe to immediately. And Canadian Royalty. He's put, hi Del, it's nice to hear that your mum is doing better with the pain she's feeling and her mobility. Your own interactions with NHS are shockingly poor on their part. The healthcare system where I live is absolutely overloaded, with our provisional government has its head in the sand about it. They are happy to find lots of nonsense while fighting with doctors, nurses and others involved in healthcare. Doctors and others have left our province in droves. Sort of similar thing happened here. We had residential doctors that turned into locums. And it's now virtually impossible to have a set doctor. It will be a locum on the day. Not the best way to handle healthcare. Training is a good thing, as long as you are given time to complete it. Here's a question. I know you can't go into much detail, but in general terms, what sort of training are you having to do? I can actually probably go into detail because it's nothing special. We do every year what they call mandatory training, and all my mandatory training has been done. You have until the end of March to do that, and I've done all of mine. I completed the last one last week. There was only one to go. This mandatory training is many different types of training. There's usually about 5. They're things like what's expected of you being a civil servant, diversity in the workplace, health and safety, security, and what to look out for. That includes phishing emails, viruses, all of that sort of stuff. So that's the mandatory training, and we get that every year. It has to be renewed. No, my training is based on a bigger picture where I think the MOJ and the team that I work in want to have a set standard on what the qualifications should be if you applied for the job. And one of those is ServiceNow training, which is a huge program, well known across the world. It's an industry-wide world database program. And with that in mind, it's the hardware asset module that we believe everybody should have. So you should have ServiceNow fundamentals and hardware asset management. And I'm about 75% through the hardware asset management module, which is comprised of, I think, 6 sections with 14 lessons per section, something like that. And it's got lab work. So you open up a virtual machine and you follow a lab guide to affirm what you've learnt. Plus, there is a knowledge-based thing at the end. And so it can slow you down a little bit. And the concentration needed when you're talking about hardware asset management in regards to stock control, warehouses, the difference between a configurable item and an asset, what assets actually are, which, by the way, everything to do with databases is to add value, whether that be financial or service value. When you come to an asset, it's tracking an asset's value. So, yeah, having figures next to the devices that you put in and the detail of what operating systems in it, all of that, there's a lot to do with that. So hopefully that gives you a bigger understanding of the training. The concentration has to be immense on that. So as always, all the best to you and your mum and family. And you know full well, Robert, I'm going to pass that on. I miss our times when we used to play on the Minecraft server. I'm so glad that you're in my life. I can watch the videos of you playing on Atari games. Always a joy every morning for me to watch a master at work. And I use that figuratively correctly. You are a master at your art. And I can't imagine waking up and not hearing your voice as you talk for a game. I know that you're planning something very special. I think the very first episode is out, and that is NES games, for which I think you're going to publish 3 a day. My God, man, slow down. That'll be a tall order. I can listen to you in the morning, but it's more difficult towards the afternoon, and the evening is nigh on impossible. So, yeah, I'm going to have to sort of have a think about that. That's going to be interesting. Salute, my friend, and please, anybody, go and have a subscribe to his channel. Absolutely fantastic. Moving on, we get to my friend Martroid. He hasn't got a channel, but he's written, "Thanks for the kind words, Del. I'll be away next week camping off the grid and won't have steady internet. So I'll no doubt have some catching up to do when the next blog comes out. Always a pleasure to watch, though. And as always, all the best to you and your mum." Oh, absolutely fantastic. And my pleasure, my friend. Now, there's only 2 more to go, but I'm just going to take another little break. I do apologise. Just want to check on something. So if you don't mind me doing this, I'll be back in a moment. Thanks very much. So back again, and we'll continue. And as I said before, please go and subscribe to those guys. We get to my friend Colin Jones, aka Pondo. He's got his own channel as well. Looking forward to his new blog. And of course, he's doing his challenges, which I'll talk about later. He's put, good to hear your mum's mobility is improving, but nobody ever calls back these days. No. Although we did actually get that on Monday, believe it or not, Colin. So, yes, they did. Amazingly. I think it's a one-off. You're both doing an amazing thing, looking after your mum. Sending my regards as always. You call those two conflicting letters ridiculous. I call it incompetence. Yeah, definitely. Gaming is about having fun, so you're doing that bit right. I don't think they can make a reboot of Blake 7 work either. It was unique and deep for the time. Could be wrong, but I doubt it. And a little secret here, I was going to deliberate that last Saturday with my friend Denny, but unfortunately he had something else that cropped up. That's the problem. Me and Denny used to love doing our chats. We still want to do them. Something always crops up. One of those things. Eurovision changed when they brought in audience voting. This and the split of the Soviet Union, which left entrants voting for their neighbours, ruined it, and it's never recovered. Totally agree. I don't think Saudi's strategy on purchase of gaming companies is about money. It's about information. All that personal data that's now in their hands. Call me paranoid, but that's my suspicion. And you know what? I'd say that was a big chunk of it. I'd say that money motivates me, comes into this equation. But yes, all that, just think about all of those accounts, addresses, bank details. Yeah, bad thing. I really don't think you need to apologise for taking a break. It's over for us in the blink of an eye, so it doesn't affect viewing. And how you're feeling is far more important anyway. Take as many breaks as you need. Thank you very much. And I must admit, it's just fatigue at the moment. It's not any medical reason for it. So hopefully I don't look like I'm drooping too much, although I did feel it last week a little bit. So my question, and you're quite right, I do, take pauses, and it doesn't seem to do too much, but it's one of those things of what comes into your brain. I could just hit the pause and they'd probably never even know about it. I just say what it's like Mr. Chips, say what you see. And my brain just instantly says it. My question, what is the best transition between album tracks you've heard? Mine is between track 5 and 6 on lemonjelly.ky, where it sounds like a scratch in a record, but it's actually part of the music. Yeah, no, this is an interesting subject because I bought many albums, and I do know that a transition can make or break an album. Earliest one that I listened to, going back to War of the Worlds, there's so much that goes on in that story, such as a track will sort of semi-fade out and Big Ben would be heard, and then you'd hear Richard Burton narrate his dialogue. And transitions, smooth transitions, is something that most artists want. But I do know that there are some weird ones. I remember listening to, this is going back some time, bloody hell, listening to the Beach Boys, Pet Sounds. If I remember rightly, right at the end of the last track, you can hear a dog barking. I thought that was weird. I think when I watched a documentary on, is it Brian? Yeah, Brian Wilson. That's his dog. That's his own dog that he purposely put at the end track to play off the album, if I remember rightly. Now, I'm trying to think of some soundtracks here, but soundtracks are disjointed, mostly. They're much better now. They're doing what they call expanded scores. So they sort of go well. They're almost in our film order now. So that's not quite so easy a thing to think of as a weird transition. But if I was to think really hard, there must be weird transitions in a Beatles album. Probably Sergeant Pepper, or I bet you Abbey Road probably got something. That or Pink Floyd, over-engineered albums, possibly the Alan Parsons Project. Maybe let me think. Rick Wakeman, maybe. He engineered a lot of his albums. Might have some transitions, but I don't know whether they do. Do you see what I mean? So I won't speculate too more on that. What a great question. Thank you so much, Colin. I'll be watching, as I always do. Please go and subscribe to him. Absolutely fantastic channel. And description is always in the links are in the description. And we get to the last comment. I think it's the last one. Yes, we Bob Art. So these aren't in any order, by the way. Maybe you'll remember his comment because he's last on the list. I hope so. I'm an hour and 36 minutes in and time for bed. Wow, sorry I took so long. I will watch the rest later this week. All the best to you and your family. Thank you for answering my question. I have been collecting 50p coins with different designs for some time now, and this week I got a little album to put them in. I still don't have a full collection, but not really too bothered about that. The Kew Gardens 50p is worth like 150 to 250 quid, and I'm not paying that for a 50 pence piece. My question this week is therefore, back when you were just a wee rascal in the 70s and 80s, how do you do that? Did you ever collect anything? Question mark. For me, I did. Used to keep sticker books for football and cartoons, and I did have quite the collection of colour changing cars. Run them under hot water and they would change colour. One thing that popped into my mind is the felt tip pens that would change colour when you used the magic felt tip, which would change the red to yellow, for example. I used to think it was like magic. Wow, no, there's a lot to digest here. The 50p piece, I think I told you that my friend Steve Baxter, Dotty we called him, he was collecting 50 pence pieces. I gave him a few. He was looking at things like serial numbers and all sorts of things on them, or the edges and all that sort of stuff. I think he was doing it for pound coins as well. Pound coins was a big thing for him, not 50 pence pieces. But wow, I wouldn't pay that either. But did I collect anything? Yeah, and I still am now. Collected comics, it just went on and on and on. Everything I bought had to be in a range of something. Even Stretch Armstrong had a second creature, a green gilled monster. I think it was just called Stretch Monster. Everything was a collection, but the little things were always what you could carry into school. And I used to like getting things like Starlog and Starburst magazine, and films would come out with a sticker book. And I remember collecting the Star Wars ones and the Superman, the movie sticker books. And I'd swap like crazy for those. And later on, we'd play Top Trumps and other sort of like card-related stuff aimed for kids. And we'd throw them at the wall. And if they landed with face wide up, and you would get that person's card and keep it for yourself. I'm pretty sure people that did Pogs and Pokemon would probably recognize this game more than anything. And it's interesting that you mentioned the felt tip things. I had those, but I had them much later. My mum and dad didn't have a wealth of money, and we always had little craft painting brushes because I'd do Airfix kits. And I remember buying, or should I say my mum buying me colouring books where you added water to the picture and the colour would come through. It's because they had little dots. And when you put the water on it, it changed colour. It didn't change colour. It just brought the colour up. It would be a blank white page with a picture in line format. And you used your paintbrush and it coloured it in. I mean, if you think about it, you could have just got one great big paintbrush and just gone like that with the water and it would have done the same thing. But no, I'd have the little brush doing the lines and hoping that I didn't go over the lines, just as if I was colouring it in with wax crayons. But yeah, that comes to mind. But I remember that felt tip, it was white, wasn't it? It had a white, stiff end, and you put that over the top of what you did and it changed the colour. It was brilliant. Loved all of that. Marvellous. Anyway, as I said, all the best wishes, you say. Thank you so much. Absolutely marvellous. And that ends that. So we've got to the end of the comments. So we'll just run quickly through what I watched on YouTube. It is that section now. So as you know, there are 4 things that I watch religiously. They are This Week in Retro, Techmoan, The Gadget Show, and Chronologically Gaming. Everyone but Techmoan brought something out, but I think Techmoan is at the moment, at this early part of the year, doing one every 2 weeks. Or he might have done one today. I haven't checked because sometimes he'll bring out one late. But This Week in Retro had the standard 3 subjects with a housekeeping and a community question. The 3 topics were high quality CD emulation is here, the Pico IDE. Software preservation, tough truths. Yeah, that was quite good. And story retracted past CRT, possible CRT and VHS. This is in regards to the fact that they retracted a story but continued with their own story in regards to VHS and CRT screens. That was quite interesting. But I think the most important question for me was the software preservation. That's quite an interesting subject, really, to be quite honest. One that Alan and I have talked about and Colin's talked about, and all that sort of stuff, because of our collections of ROMs. And how they're preserved and how the big companies are closing down ROM sites and making them go underground and all of that sort of stuff. But this was more about preservations like the EXO project and stuff. So it was interesting, quite good. So we moved past Techmoan and we get to the Gadget Show. A couple of videos here. One was called Best Toys of 2026 and Future of AI Gadgets. And then the last one was Most Expensive Gadget Fails Ever. That was really enjoyable. I watched that and I really enjoyed that. Finding out what the #1 gadget that's lost the most money and other stuff. Interesting to see Samsung's Galaxy Note. Was it 6, they said? Yeah, 6. Lost billions because of the battery. If you remember the story about the batteries blowing up, one blew up on a plane, so they lost a lot of customer support in relation to that. But it goes ever deeper. There's mobile scooters, segways, and other stuff that was in there. That was brilliant. Really enjoyed that. And Chronologically Gaming, he did a 1982 continued because he's still in 1982. And the game of choice this week was Deep Sea Adventure. But he did mention that he's already researching 83 as he goes through the end of 82. And he's nearing the end of his research. So that's great. What else did I see? So that's beyond those 4. All of those I'd recommend that you subscribe to, but it's up to you. But I'd definitely check some of them out. Modern Vintage Gamer, he did, and I do watch him on occasion. He did Nintendo 3DS prices have skyrocketed. Here is why. Now, I knew about this 2 years ago, to be quite honest. Skyrocketed? My God. But they are now at a price. This is no word of a lie. The 3DS, especially the larger screened 3DS, it's like $300 or $400, which is in our money, you know, the 350 quid range. And it's a ridiculous price. But it's an absolutely stunning handheld console. So versatile. It only discontinued 5 years ago. I'm hoping it settles down. But yeah, the 3DS is getting harder and harder, the larger screen one, to buy at any reasonable price. I ain't prepared to pay 350 quid. I'd love the deluxe larger one, but I've got the smaller one. And it's perfect. It's no scratches on it. It's in great working order, and I can still get the benefit of it. So it's just I'd love a spare, and I'd like it to be the deluxe larger one, which I couldn't afford at the time. Then we get to a channel called Retro Reels. They had an early copy of Excalibur that's coming out on 4K in February. That was an interesting thing, because he was saying in that channel, it might well be that they'll make changes. But I've got a funny feeling that if you've got something that's come off the production line, that's probably the one they're going to go with. So I didn't pay too much attention to that last comment, really, from the person who was reviewing it. Then you've got dropping names with Brent and Johnny. And this started for me last week. It is Brent Spiner and Jonathan Frakes from Star Trek The Next Generation doing a podcast where fans ask them questions. Questions come through off of the internet and YouTube itself. Plus, every time they drop a name in an anecdote story, they ring a bell. It's really quite interesting to watch, and I really like that. Then there's a channel called Shot, Drawn and Cut. This was interesting to me because it was celebrating 50 years of commercials directed by Ridley Scott. We have to remember that Ridley Scott, the prolific director who I love to death, started off in commercials. And many of the commercials that I saw, I didn't know he'd even done. Although I was aware of him doing certain adverts that were very stylized, like Hovis. I didn't know he did so many for like Shell, so where you get your oil from, and see Hovis, Captain Birdseye. He did a number of those. He did loads, and that was a brilliant film because I love Ridley Scott. Then there was a channel called RDKL who did a little broadcast that came up in my alert box because it was the Amiga 1000. This guy rescued, I think 6 A1000s. That would have been a substantial amount of money back in the day, because I had an A1000 and I had one of the early ones that came into this country. And he was talking about stuff he rescued from landfill. So I hope he didn't pay too much. I think he paid close to $1,000, but he did get 6 A1000s, go-kart drives, memory expansions, all sorts of stuff, so he can modernize them. So that was brilliant. Then we've got the last one on this page, which is the Commodore 64 Appreciation Society. That's the channel. This week's was to do with leaderboard golf, but it did go into other areas. So that was interesting as well. And I love my history, so that was fantastic. I've got 2 pages to go, so I'm just going to take another break. Hope you don't mind. Back very, very shortly.
So we're nearing the end, so let's get this done. And the next section is called Film, TV, Soundtrack and YouTube. Right away, the top one is Ian Hill, The Ramblings, who I've mentioned many times before. But please do go and look at his channel. Absolutely fantastic. Look at the content that's here. Top 5 historical films, 2003 to 2009. He's probably done another one now. Doctor Who review of The Romans, which is William Hartnell's era. Absolutely fantastic little review that was. X-Files review, season 5, episode 16. So he's going hell for leather through X-Files. Then a good friend of ours, Tony York's, obviously a friend of Ian before me, sent a box of DVDs as a gift. And my God, the amount of DVDs that were in there, absolutely fantastic. I like it when people, good people like Ian, get gifts. I'm sure he's taken aback like me whenever I receive anything on that. And then, of course, Live with Me, which must be the highlight of the week for his channel and gives you the absolute opportunity to see me cock up as much as I do on here. So there you go. Moving on, Mondo Chelovic Movies. He did a members only thing this week, but do remember he is a go-to guy for your horror and physical media, and of course he swapped jobs, and I'm wishing him really well in his new job, so that was great. Through the Lens, which is now called Just Joshings, did quite a bit this week. He did a video of Best Picture nominations ranked, so that's great. Couple of shorts as well. He did Mercy, weirdest movie ever. That was a film short. And this should have won an Oscar. It was a review of a film called Spencer. I think you'll pretty know what that's about if I mention the word Spencer. Can only really be one of the royal family. So that I totally agree with. Then we've got Movie Collector, who I watch on occasion. He's an ex-projectionist, heavily into his projection work and film history. He did a review of F1 the movie, the 4K of it. I've got that film, so that was very interesting from a picture sound perspective. So there's been many reviews of the actual film. And then you've got Commode and Mayo's Take, which used to be my go-to listen to on the radio when I was traveling home from work. They now do it on YouTube as a podcast. They reviewed Nouvelle Vague, I think that's what it's called. Primate, that's another film this year. Is This Thing On? That's another film this year. And the Box Office Top 10, which I religiously listen to, a little bit like when I used to listen to the Top 40 singles on a Sunday from, what was it? Was it from 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock? It used to be a couple of hours. I think it was 5 to 7. 5 till 7. That's interesting. My brain not knowing if that was 6 till 8 or 5 till 7. Pretty sure it was till 7. So there you go. Always like to listen to find out what that is. And then the last section is called Game and Tech YouTube. These are friends that I know, spoken to without just texting, that sort of stuff. And we've got the top one, Down the Rabbit Hole. Now he played one of the videos he did was Sega Genesis Paperboy with the ASCII Wear clutch stick. Now he's bought this joystick called an ASCII 2. It's always a difficult thing for me to pronounce. ASCII 2 clutch. And he played Paperboy on it and found it immensely more controllable with that stick. So there's something that you learn straight away. He also then did another one, which is totally separate type of video to do, which was called Wait a Sec, Patti Smythe had another album in the 80s. He goes into his past. He did live over in the UK for a period of time and didn't therefore follow many American bands, but Patti Smythe is one that he loved to listen to and liked her looks and everything, knew about her history and the band that she played in. And he found out that there was another album that he wasn't aware of. So he went out and bought it on CD. And he goes out of his way to explain Here you are, boys and girls, CDs. Go and ask your granddad. And it's quite right. When you think back, it would be your granddad you'd probably be talking about. Say, Granddad, what's a CD? Because hardly anybody talks about them anymore. Ian and I are definitely in the CD bandwagon. I loved my vinyl and records, but I bought a lot of CDs. And so I have a very, very big nostalgia bent towards them. Then we get to my good friend Robert's Retro Gaming. And by the way, subscribe to all of these guys. They're absolutely fantastic. And look at how much he's brought out the great person that he is in Canada. Sod features. My little joke, and I'm sure he's smiling at that. He did Dwarf Fortress Classic Episode 24, Minecraft Play Episode 179, SNES Gameplay Super Mario World, what a game, C64 Gameplay Wavy Navy, which I have very fond memories of playing, Atari 8-bit Miner 1049er, not 2049er, 1049er, MASH Prototype. So there's a game that he's played that's a prototype that's just been released on the Atari 2600, and Space Dungeon. And he's got a big surprise for us in the next couple of weeks, because he's going to be doing a big section on something that I'm not aware of just yet. I have my sort of like suspicions, but I won't say anything here. But I bet it's game related, and I'm sure it's going to be absolutely fun. So if you're curious like me, go over, have a little subscribe to him. We've mentioned already just now my relationship and friendship with Steve's Gaming Part 2. Got a great channel. What's he done this week? He did a Mainmeister High Score Kerfuffle video because he loves Mr. Do. And so he wanted to do a video. He also did the Atari Home Soft Discs numbers 102 to 104. And there may well be that there's another video out there now, because I checked these sort of like late last night. So between then and now, for all I know, he's got another one out there. So go over there and have a look. Absolutely fantastic. Then you've got Colin Jones, aka Ponder. He did everything C64 challenge of Starpost. Starpost was a game I did play on the VIC-20. He played the C64 version and showed off just what an interesting and great game it is if you've got a paddle, which is what it was mostly played for. So that was brilliant. Then he did a Mainmeister High Score kerfuffle of the aforementioned, as I said just now, Mr. Do. So it'd be interesting to know what the high scores are on that. Absolutely fantastic. 20th Century Gaming did 2 streams between last time and this time. He did a Zap issue 16 last week, but he also did a last V8 attempts a couple of days later, where he tries to play that incredibly hard game on the Commodore 64, The Last V8, written by the Codemaster Darling brothers, Richard and David Darling. And that brought back many memories. And lastly, we've got Seb's Place, who did C64 games you played, but your mates didn't. So that was interesting, because I looked at the list of games while listening to the actual YouTube video, and most of them I saw. In fact, I only got lost on the ones that were on front cover magazines. So that was interesting to know that the only ones I can't comment on too much are ones that you'd type in or came on a cover disc. So that's interesting. Let's now go to the overhead cam and show you what's turned up this week. Everything in this that's turned up is quite cheap, and there's not much of it. There is this Henry VIII. As I said, I've been heavily into my historical stuff just recently. This is Ray Winston's 2001's documentary on Henry VIII. It comes on, I think it comes on 2 discs. Yes, it does. There we go. So I'm really looking forward to that. And it's got Ray Winston and Helena Bonham Carter. That's an interesting name. I haven't heard that in a long time. Then we've got the smashing machine. Now this is that fighting championship where you kick with your legs and punch with your hands. It's not something I'd normally watch, but this was a recommendation and I got it cheap. It's a steelbook. It was just over a tenner. So it was very, very cheap. As was, by the way, Henry VIII was £2, if anybody's interested. This is a true story of a person who almost set up the UFC fighting championship. And it's a very sad story. So I am actually quite looking forward to watching that one. Based on my friendship with Ian Hill, The Ramblings, I bought Cromwell. As you can see, it's sealed, but it's an oldish disc and quite cheap. So that's great. And then this one, which I've had for a while, but I haven't got around to watching it. And that's A Man for All Seasons. Again, Henry VIII Tudor type thing. You can see there's a lot of extras on this. I'll hold it up in case you want to freeze it. So A Man for All Seasons. How many awards that won? It must have. It was in the Oscars and won no end when it came out. And what a cast! Let's see if I can read them out. Robert Shaw, Orson Welles, Susanna York, Paul Scofield. I mean, my God, what a listing! And that's everything. So I'm going to go back to the camera and say thank you very much for watching. Hope you enjoyed this blog. I continue to do them. We're heading into year 5. The format might change a little bit. I am noticing that, yeah, they're a bit long. I don't mind that because people can listen to them in bits or whatever. And they're of subjects that make me deliberate, make my brain fire up. It's like a car engine. I'm just going at all cylinders. The spark is just coming up, So thank you very much for watching. And I'm just going to say, be good to yourselves. Live in the moment. We don't know what's going to be happening next week. We don't know who we might lose. We don't know who we might meet. Bear all that in mind. And with that, I'm going to say salute until next week. Hopefully there'll be some more stuff coming out this week. I'm sorry I didn't do a live yesterday, but I waited for my friend to come out and do his live. That's 20th Century Gaming. And I'm so glad that I did, because what an enjoyable time I had. And with that, salute. And thank you very much. Bye-bye.